I was 8 and woke up to an explosion of dog barks and screams coming from our backyard, then the screams trailing down the street. We get outside and my dog is chewing on a bloody shoe and a bit of gym shorts were hanging off the backyard fence. We call the cops, they investigate. From the footprints they could see the guy tried every window with my dog following. When he got to mine, my dog went full attack mode. The guy was picked up that night on unrelated charge, but they put 2 and 2 together later and charged him. My dog allowed them to collect the gym shorts, but that shoe was his. He was happy and let the cops pet him as much as they liked. Animal control the next day when they drew a little blood for a rabies test. That shoe though was his.
I was about 5 or so and I used to come home from school and I would be alone as my sister was at school and my parents were at work. The house was at the bottom of a long driveway too, with a big ass yard and a huge bush with a river behind it, so it was kind of isolated. One day I came home from school, down the driveway as usual, went to unlock the gate and noticed that our front door was broken but the gate wasn't. As I said, I was only 5 so I wasn't very smart. I proceeded to open the gate to go in and as I entered, I heard a few someone's running out the back door. I went into the house and saw that the burglars had broken in through a back window and just took everything. Point of the story is that they were still in the house when I arrived home, and when they heard the front gate opening, they fled out the back as they probably thought it was my dad, who is a police officer. Had they known it was just a 5-year-old kid, who knows what would have happened to me. Makes my fucking blood run cold just thinking about it.
I was home for the summer from college, and my mother and brother had just headed out for a few-day trip to visit colleges. This meant I was to take care of my father. Dad. Something was clearly wrong, but we couldn't tell what. He had Parkinson's, but it was more than that. But we figured I could handle him. This is when I came to realize something in his broken mind hated me with a passion. He wouldn't listen to anything I said. Now I admit I was pissed off, so I wasn't doing a terrific job, but even simple things like getting him food was an hour-long ordeal that ended with us shouting. This last time, I called Mom on the house phone because at least he'd listen to her. I gave him one phone and I was on another, yelling at each other through it even though we were 5 feet apart. Poor Mom trying to referee from a few hundred miles away. Finally, Dad hangs up his phone and hands it to me. Oh, he's done, thank God, I think. But then he tries to take the still active phone from my hand, which I refuse. And that's when it happens. It gives me chills to this day. A change came over him. It was subtle, but he stood slightly straighter. It was like for a moment someone else was in his body. He stared at me, and in the most calm, cold voice I have ever heard, said, "I'm going to kill you." There was no emotion behind it. There was no energy. He said it as fact. I was stunned. Mom heard it over the phone. As I stood there, paralyzed, her voice broke through in a whisper. "Key, run." I threw the phone at Dad, rounded the corner and grabbed my keys. My car screamed out of the driveway. It was pure animal instinct for me at that point. I had to run. Because if I stayed there, Dad didn't really remember what happened. He was confused as to why I was suddenly gone. I have no idea what went on in his head at that moment, but I stared into something back there.
I went to see a movie with a friend of mine. It was dark when we got out of the movie and she offered me a ride home, but it was pretty short walk, nice night, and I live in really safe town. Usually. So I start to walk home. I guess I should mention, I'm a woman, and a particularly small one. About 2 blocks into my walk I hear yelling and screaming, moaning. I look and these 2 guys in hoodies are kicking something, but I can't see what because there is this short cement wall blocking my view. They shout something, not at me, and take off in the opposite direction. So I run to where they had been. That all happened very quickly. I get there and there is this homeless man. It's really dark, but he's obviously hurt badly. He has a blanket. He was clearly sleeping when these guys came up and attacked him. I actually recognized him, not by name, but it's a small town, and I've seen him around. He gets up and grabs his blanket and looks around for a minute. I try to talk to him, but he just can't really talk to me. He's quite mentally ill and has now been hit in the head, and he's just terrified. He takes a couple steps as I'm calling 911 and ends up under a street light. His head and face are covered in blood with some dirt caked over it. To the point I can't see any skin on his face. He's way too spooked to let me try to help. I'm explaining to 911 the situation, but mostly just begging for an ambulance. They want to know about the two guys, of course, but I didn't see them well, and I have this guy bleeding from his head in front of me. And then he starts walking. I have no way to stop him, so I just follow a little bit behind because I don't want to be an extra thing that terrifies him, but I also need to update 911 where we are. We made it like 8 blocks before the fire truck intercepted us. I am shocked he makes it that far. No one else is out. 911 keeps wanting me to give a more detailed description, which is the one point I lost it a little bit. He's the only guy covered in blood walking down street name. Sorry 911 operator. I cannot describe how relieved I was when the fire truck showed up. The police talked to me for a little bit. Then they left, the guy had been transported and the fire truck was gone. All of a sudden everyone was gone and I was just standing there on an empty street in the dark. I took a step to start to walk home, now farther than where I started, and decided to call my friend instead. She drove back and took me home. The guy with the head injury lived. The two terrible humans who did that were never caught. Closing parenthesis.
When I was a freshman in high school, my cousin was huge into JROTC in the Army, and was admitted to West Point. However, he was shot and killed the winter of his senior year in high school, and was buried in Army service dress. Fast forward to that summer, I was attending encampment as part of Civil Air Patrol, which is like a week-long basic training for new cadets. At graduation, we were all standing on the parade field in the 90-degree Virginia summer heat when suddenly I felt ice cold. I looked across the field to the bleachers where our parents were sitting, and standing in front of the bleachers was a pale white figure in full Army service dress, clearly blocking the view of quite a few people for the whole ceremony. Nobody else was standing, and nobody asked him to sit, even though there were also many people in uniform sitting down. I kept my eye on the figure the whole time, which stood completely still at parade rest the entirety that I could see it, but after the pass in review was complete and we returned to our spots on the field, the figure was gone. After the ceremony was over, I asked everyone in my flight if they had seen the figure, and everyone said they didn't see anyone by that description. To this day, I am 100% sure it was my cousin coming back one last time to see me off.